All right, your last direction was to do all of the work on this sheet. I would also like you to make sure you have this sheet handy. So if you need to pause the video and rifle through your papers and grab it, please start the video again once you have both papers in front of you. First thing you are going to do is check yourself on this assignment. So, 5.5 meters by 3 meters. For the perimeter, I had to add them. So, I already added the 3 and 3 in my head to get 6. 5.5 and 5.5. I added the 5s and got 10. Plus 6 was 16. Half plus half is another whole. That makes 17 meters. What about finding the area? Well, that's a little bit trickier, right? Because there's a fraction involved. We need to take 5.5 times 3. Well, 3 over 1 turns the whole number into a fraction. 5.5, 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 more is 11 halves. 11 times 3 is 33, 2 times 1 is 2. 33 halves is not okay for my final answer. So then 33 divided by 2, top number divided by bottom, goes in there 16 whole times, but there is 1 remaining. That's the numerator of the fraction. Out of 2, the denominator stays the same since I didn't have to simplify. There's 1 more that I am going to have you check right now. The other 3 you'll need to take a photograph and send to me. So you should know if you get number 2 or number 4 wrong, look much more carefully at 3, 5, and 6 before you photograph them to send. So your perimeter for number 4, 7 plus 7, 20 plus 20. I did that addition in my head. 7 plus 7 is 14. 20 plus 20 is 40. 40 plus 14 is 54. What about the area? How did I do this with no work? Well, it's going to be 20 sections this way, 7 sections this way. How many squares? Well, I'll have 7 20 times. 2 times 7 is 14. 20 times 7 is 14 with a 0. If you can't see that in your head, absolutely do it on paper. 3, 5, and 6, you need to send me that photograph as well as some work on this paper. This is going to take you a little bit longer. So how do you go about doing that? Well, number 1 is fairly straightforward. It doesn't give you a nice spot over here on the side, so just write your answer right next to it. Number 2, you have to think about it a little bit. And yes, I want you to think about it. Letter A and letter B, put your answers right here. Do it in order. If you can figure out which one of these spots is showing 4/8, 3/8 will be a little bit what? More or less? You decide. Number 3, take this and split it into 4 equal pieces. Anytime you're splitting into an even number of equal pieces, start by splitting it in half. That's about half. Then concentrate and say, okay, what number times 2 will get me 4? Well, 2 times 2 is 4. That means I only need to split this part into 2 equal pieces and this part into 2 equal pieces. Now I have approximately 4 equal pieces. Label it. So now that you have 4 equal pieces, there is one of your pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that are the same size. Once you get to this mark, how many of those 4 pieces do you have? Your label will be in a fraction. Once you get to this mark, how many of the 4 pieces do you have? Starting at 0 and going all the way to here. Starting at 0 and going all the way to here. Number 4, the fraction that makes the equation true. So they have a question mark. You could just as easily substitute a letter variable like x. So what fraction plus 2/7 equals 1 whole amount? Put your answer right next to it in the box. Number 5, mark the location of 6/2. You should recognize this is an improper fraction. So you can do this two ways. You can go, all right, there's two pieces that make up the whole. So one of those two, that's 1/2. The second one, that's 2/2. When I get over here, I have 3/2. I also have 1.5. Here I have 4/2. So find the spot where you have 6/2. The other way of doing it is saying, oh wait, I recognize top number divided by bottom number is going to tell me where to go without counting from the beginning. Number 6, use the visual model. All right, so what you want to do is you want to add whole numbers to whole numbers. So you start out with 3 whole things. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Got them. Add another whole number. Boom. Got it. Then thirds. Well, sheesh, these are all split into thirds, right? I start with 1/3. Since I haven't taken up the whole thing, I'm also going to put 1/3 in my second third. It should be obvious what your answer is. However, I also want you to do over here 3 2/3 plus 1 1/3 equals, add them, simplify. What you put in here should match the amount that we have documented in the visual model. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. These are simply review. They're not even story problems. You will need to subtract, subtract, add, subtract, and always, always, always simplify. Circle your final answers. The back side, here's another one. That's just regular. It's left over from the front side. So you show all your work, add them. Number 14 is a little bit different. So for number 14, I'm going to take some of this white space up here, and I'd like you to do so as well for your workspace. So what's it say? Over the weekend, Olivia spent 5 3/4 total hours studying. If she spent 18/4 of those hours studying on Saturday, how long did she study on Sunday? So it's like this. This is her total time studying. It tells us how much she spent on one day. So we know the total, and we know one day. One day. We need to know the other. Well, since it tells us the total and tells us one day, we have to take the one day out of the total in order to find the other. If we are taking amounts away, that must mean we subtract. So the problem starts out as 5 3/4 minus 18/4. You should recognize that this is an improper fraction. You could borrow from your 5 3/4, but you would have to borrow several times in order to do this. What would that look like? Well, the first time you borrow, it's going to become a 4. You add 4/4, which means you have 4 7/4 over here, and you still need to take away 18/4. You still do not have enough on top in order to subtract 18 from your 7. So you could keep on going. If you take away from the 4, it becomes a 3. You add on 4 more fourths. You have 3 and 11 fourths, taking away 18 fourths. Oh, good gracious, will this ever end? Well, if you add 4 more fourths, you still only have 15 fourths. It's not enough. So, yes, I do want you to have all this work, but now that you've seen that, a better choice from the beginning is to turn 18 fourths into a mixed number. That way you won't have to borrow nearly as much. How do you turn 18 fourths into a mixed number? Top number divided by the bottom. I can make 4 whole groups of 4 out of 18 pieces, and I will have 2 pieces left over. So I'm going to start all over here with 5 and 3/4. That was my original total. This time I'm going to take away 4 and 2/4. Yes, you need to copy all of that. This is the part that will get you your final answer. 15, 16, multiplying. They're already fractions, so that's nice. You do need to simplify the final answers. You will notice 17, 18, 19, you are multiplying again. So when you multiply, are you adding? No. Are you subtracting? No. Do you need the same size pieces? Do you need common denominators? No. What do you need? Everything needs to be a fraction. So, takes 5 pieces to make a whole thing. You have 3 whole things. That means you have 15 pieces. Those 15 pieces plus 1 more gives you 16/5 times. Here you have 3 pieces in each whole. You have 3 whole items times those 3 pieces gives you 9 pieces, 9/3, plus 1 more third. You have 10/3. Now, the reason I chose this one to show you is to remind you, when you've got these big numbers, you can simplify before you do any other work. When you're multiplying, not when you're adding, not when you're subtracting, only when you're multiplying, you can say, oh wait, let me look at the numbers across from each other. Do 16 and 3 have a common factor? Can I divide them by the same number? I cannot. But what about 5 and 10? If I divide by 5, this becomes 1. If I divide by 5, this becomes 2. So I have taken out my common factor, so I have much smaller multiplication to do. 16 times 2 is 32. Where did I do 16 times 2? Right here after I cross-simplified. What about my bottom? Well, that's 1 times 3. 32/3. Have I done this whole problem for you? I certainly have not. This is not the final answer. You have an improper fraction. You have one more step. What about this one? If I have 2 pieces in each of 3 whole items, that means I have 6 pieces plus 1 more half gives me 7/2. This is already a fraction, 1/3. Now look at it. Can I cross simplify? Nope, there's no factor shared by 7 and 3. Can I cross simplify? No, there's no factor shared by 7 and 2. I cannot cross simplify. I've showed you the process on 17 and 18 and talked you through whether or not you can cross simplify. 19 is all up to you. If you see the cross simplifying in 19, if there is any, do it. If that confuses you, just know if you don't see any cross simplifying, you need to look really carefully at your final answer, at your improper fraction, and decide, can you simplify that? 20, 21, and 22. Just want you to compare the fractions. Be careful here. Tenths and fourths, are your pieces the same size? They are not. You need common denominators first. Fifths and twelfths, are these pieces the same size? They are not. You need common denominators first. Twelfths and eighths, are your pieces the same size? They are not. You need common denominators first. Finally, you have to fill in this fraction. In order to do that, you got to look all the way at the beginning and see if you can find the pattern. How do you get from 4/5 to 8/10? Well, multiply top and bottom times 2. But 8 times nothing is 12. So how does that work? Well, you look back at the original. Does 4 times anything equal to, oh yeah, 4 times 3. Is that true for the bottom? Yep, 5 times 3 is 15. So if 12 times nothing equals 16, look back further. Does 8 times anything equal 16? Well, it does. But what if I go back even further? Would that get me more of a pattern? 4 times 4? 5 times 4? What about to get to 20 and 25? By then, you should see the pattern that it takes to get to X and Y. And then you need to tell what X equals and what Y equals. 24 and 25. Hey, I'm almost done giving you directions on this. 3/4 times 3. Well, we should already know, and I want you to do it over here to the side. 3/4 times 3 over 1. Denominators don't need to be the same, but anytime we multiply and there's a fraction, everything must be a fraction. Can we cross simplify? Not that way. Not that way. So you multiply a top times top, bottom times bottom. You have an improper fraction that you need to simplify. You'll get a whole number and a fraction. That's called a mixed number. That tells you where the answer should be. I'm going to show you the other way with this one, and you'll need to do it both ways on number 25. So, I need to take the amount 3/4 on the number line. I already have between 0 and 1 is a whole thing. There's 1 section, 2 sections, 3 sections, 4 sections. So each section is a fourth. What amount am I taking? 3/4. There's 1 section, 2 sections, 3 sections right there. That's 3/4 times 1. Here's 1/4, 2/4. Right here is my next section of 3/4. So here I have 3/4 times 2. I need one more section of 3/4. There's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So there again is my 3/4 times 3. I have to figure out where I ended up. I went from 0, past 1, past 2. So I have 2 and 1 section out of 4. I have 2 and 1/4. What else do I have? 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, 8/4. Hey, look at that. 9/4. 9/4. This answer that you put in here, and yes, you need to copy all of this, should match what I actually showed you on the number line. Number 25, you need to do the regular multiplication over here. Circle your final answer, but then come back and find 3/7 once, 3/7 again, and 3/7 the third time. And it should come out to match exactly what you'd get when you just do the multiplication. These 2 assignments today are review to prepare for the test tomorrow. So be very careful as you do these. In order to help you be sure that you have prepared for the test, I want you to make sure you do this assignment, but then check it. So this is what you should come up with for 1 through 5. So the answer for number 4, by the way, is the 5/7 right here. The answer for number 5 is 6/2 or 3. Number 6, final answer is 5. Number 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. If you didn't simplify, if you missed turning mixed numbers into improper fractions and then adding that to the whole number that was already there, those are some things that would have made it wrong. If when you borrowed from the 10, you didn't turn it into a 9 and add 5/5 to the 1/5 that was already there, so that you have 6/5 minus 4/5, that again would have caused you to be wrong. If you did not catch when you took 6/12 minus 4/12, that 2/12 has a common factor you can divide by to simplify to 1/6. All of those items would make you get wrong answers. On the back side, number 13, final answer is 3 1/4. Number 14, final answer is 1 1/4. It was a story problem, so it needs to be labeled hours. Number 15, 8/25. Number 16, yes, you should have 3/12, but it is not a final answer until you mark 1/4. 17, if you cross simplify and get 32/3, 32 divided by 3 gives you 10 with a remainder of 2. So you have 10 and 2/3. There was no cross simplification when you had 7/2 times 1/3. So you come up with 7/6. You take one whole group of 6 out there, and you are left with one more 6th. 19. This one I cross simplified. If you did not cross simplify, your answer was 54/20, and you would have gotten, or no, your answer was, 54/20, and then you would have gotten 2 and 14/20, and I see my mistake here. My denominator should stay as tenths. I got a lot of my 2's mixed up, didn't I? I got 27/10 because I divided both by 2 here. So then I could mark 3 times 9 is 27, 5 times 2 is 10. So I had smaller numbers to deal with. If I have 27 pieces and it takes 10 to make a whole thing, I could get 2 whole items with 7 pieces left over out of the 10 I need to make a whole. Number 20, common denominator was 40. Numerators are 16 and 10. 16 is larger. 21, common denominators are 20. Numerators are 12 and 55. 55 is larger. Oops, common denominators were 60, not 20. 22, I made my common denominator 24. That was the smallest number. That way I didn't have to deal with 96ths. So in order to do that, 12 times 2 is 24, so 9 times 2 is 18. 8 times 3 is 24, so 3 times 3 is 9. 18 is larger than 9. Even if you multiplied 9 and 12 times 8 and 3 and 8 times 12, you still would have gotten a larger number of pieces on this side. 23, I talked you all the way through, 23, I talked you all the way through figuring out, hopefully, that you had to say 4 times 6 and get 24, and 5 times 6 and get 30. That's the only way to continue this pattern. 24, I showed you everything all the way up to the final answer. 2 1/4. 25. When you multiplied it out, you should have gotten 9/7, which is the same as 1 whole thing with 2 more sevenths. 3/7, 3 more sevenths, 3 more sevenths, puts you at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sevenths, and 1, 2 more sevenths. If there were any here that confused you or tricked you, go back and work through them, especially problems like 15 through 25, because it's going to be mostly multiplication with fractions on the test. Your assignment is the area and perimeter rectangles. You do need to send me a photograph of number 3, 5, and 6. Thank you.